Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi everyone, I'm your host, Todd Fischer. I'm the founder of Metacortex, and I'm on a never-ending quest for knowledge. A quest is a search for something, and this podcast will show you how we know what we know through interviews with people that have incredible stories of dedication and perseverance. To me, curiosity is part of what makes us human, and there's still so much we don't know. I believe there's joy in discovery. It's what drives us. It's our quest. And with that, welcome to Season 4 of the Quest podcast. I hope you enjoy this next interview. Hi, Lucy. Welcome to the Quest podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
Yeah, I'm glad we could make this happen. At the time of this recording, it's just right after Thanksgiving. I think this is going to air at the beginning of the year in January. So we had to reschedule a couple of times because of the holiday, but we made it work. And I'm excited because you are quite exceptional. So you're in good company. A lot of my guests, I like to find just really exceptional people that have done amazing things. You are one of these people.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. You are a collegiate runner and a mountaineer. Mountaineer is not something you normally hear associated with, like, you know, a young adult 18-year-old girl. So
Definitely
I certainly
not.
want to dig into this. Let me get this right. So you are the youngest American woman to summit Everest. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. So we're going to get into this a little later in the episode, but let's go back first. Let's talk about young Lucy. Tell me, where are you from originally? How did you grow up? Do you have a large family? I'm curious, how it all got started for you.
Yeah, I grew up, well, I was born in the northern peninsula of Michigan, up in the middle of nowhere, basically, in this little town called Eagle Harbor, where there's about 100 people that live there year round, maybe like 200 in the summer. So I was born there, and that's really what I consider my home. We go back there for Christmas every year, for the summers, and I just love it up there. That's my favorite place on earth. But I kind of moved around a lot. Either that's really been my one consistent place in my life. Lived in Louisville, Kentucky up to sixth grade. Then I moved to the Chicago area and grew up in Naperville, a Chicago suburb, until the end of high school, where now I live in Los Angeles, and I go to school at USC. So that's kind of been my travel journey. I have also like lived in Mexico and everything, so because I have a lot of family there, and my family's super into traveling and just experiencing new things, new places and cultures, which I love. I have a brother, and so my family's in total 5 people. Me, my parents, my brother, and my cousin. She's actually younger than me. Like she's basically like my younger sister. She's lived with us for the past 2 years. So
Sure.
that's been really exciting.
Are you competitive with your siblings, with your parents? Like, I imagine, kind of getting into, the athletics you've been in, and you must have grown up like as a competitive kid, right?
Yeah, I definitely say I was. I was probably like more competitive, honestly, as a kid than I even am now. Now I'm definitely like more competitive, like with myself, than like with other people. I'd say I'm not really competitive with like my family anymore. Me and my brother do basically like very different sports. He's into football. I'm into long distance running and
Sure.
mountaineering. So very different, for
How
sure. But Yeah,
How
when I was
young?
younger, definitely.
Oh, yeah. How young were you when you got into athletics? When did that start to kick in?
I ran my first 5K when I was 4 years old, and that was kind of like when I fell in love with running. I just did it because my dad did it, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I want to do everything he's doing, basically. So then I got into like actually running like competitively in first grade. I joined my cross country and track team in first grade and went into club running where it really got like more serious in third grade. And then in high schools, like when it really kick-started like that super serious day in day out training. So that's been a pretty constant throughout my life, which has definitely shaped me as a person a lot. I don't know what my life would be like without running, and it's given me the skills to be able to go into the mountains and do some really cool things.
Well, I think athletics is a great way for young people to develop discipline. So certainly I think, starting kids in athletics is important. And you definitely have that. Did you grow up spiritual or religious?
Yeah, yeah, I've been a Christian all my life, and that's definitely a big part of not only like the purpose of why I climb, but also like how I do it. I think that, when I'm at the end of my rope, when I feel like, I can't do anything else, just relying on, that higher power of like having that faith to really push me and to guide me, in my journeys, been very important. And it's also definitely like um, made me want to do it for a bigger purpose as well. So I am very involved in like the world water crisis. That's really a big passion of mine, what I'm trying to study for here in college and what I want to do after college. So that is, I mean, that's been life changing for me as well. So that's really like my faith drives that passion and as well as many others.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love hearing that. That's great. So, as the youngest American woman to summit Everest, I have many questions. So, first
Oh,
off, for
sure.
the listeners, how young were you when you did this?
I was 18, so I did it about 6, 7 months ago. I just turned 19 now, but I did it I was hiking in April and May of last year.
It's interesting because having the dream of going to Everest that young doesn't seem like a normal childhood fantasy. When did you start thinking about doing this? Because I couldn't imagine doing this into my adult life. When did were you like 10 years old and one day saw a picture of the mountain and said, I'd like to climb that? Like, how does this happen that you can get to this at 18?
Honestly, I never had the goal of like just doing Everest. Everest was actually kind of part of a bigger goal that I'm trying to do, which is become the youngest person to complete the Explorers Grand Slam, which is climbing to the top of the highest mountain in every continent, and then also skiing to the last degree, the North and South Poles. So I mean, I've been mountaineering since I was 7 years old, and I started with me and my dad. Actually, he was my climbing partner, and we went to do the state high points, which basically is climbing to the tallest point in every state, which was super cool. Not only like to get into mountaineering because that's really what like allowed me to find my passion, but also just to see so much of the country and to experience, all these different places, all these different like cultures, because America is really just so big, there's so much within it to explore. So that was just super exciting for me. But I fell in love with the mountains in that time, just like the adventure, the exploration. I love nature, um, and just being, like somewhere so secluded, by yourself, where it's really all you have up there is yourself and your own skills and what you can do in the moment. So I think that's just super cool, just to learn more things about yourself and what you can do as physically, mentally, emotionally. So that is kind of like how I started mountaineering. And then the mountains just kept getting bigger and bigger. I started to do some of the highest mountains in other continents. I've done like the one in Africa, which is Mount Kilimanjaro. I did that one when I was 12. I did the highest mountain in Europe, Mount Elbrus, when I was 14. The highest one in North America when I was 17. And then the highest one in South America when I was 18, right before Everest. So that's been an amazing adventure. And that just brought me, I was like, well, I need to do Everest at some point. And I realized that I could be the youngest American woman to do it. So I mean, me and my parents, my family just really worked hard to make that happen. And I had a lot of support from different climbing companies. I got sponsors such as grape nuts because one of the big challenges of the mountains is how expensive it is. That's, one of the reasons more young people don't do it and more people in general don't do it. So that was really cool. It just all came together perfectly. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm actually doing this. So yeah, it just came together perfectly and it was an amazing experience.
Wow. Now I have even more questions. So did you complete doing all 50 states first off?
Yes, yeah, I actually
What?
became the youngest woman to do that as well.
Wow. Are you in the Guinness records for these things?
Technically not because you have to like pay a Guinness person to like come and
Oh,
verify all the
gotcha.
records and like
Right.
write it in the book. And I was like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is the record. So
So it seems odd in the 50 states, like what was the flattest state? What was the one with the least highest point? I'm curious.
I probably like Florida, Louisiana. I can't remember which one it is exactly, but a few of them, I'd say around like 15 are just about like driving there. It's very like a few steps out of your car. I remember one was like
Wow.
in the sidewalk somewhere in some neighborhood. It was actually really hard to find. So
Wow. Because
it's
those
kind
are
of funny.
pretty much sea level states right there. So I assume
Mhm.
I'm not at all knowledgeable in this at all. I should be probably, but what is the highest peak in the US? I guess that's in the Pacific Northwest, right?
It's in Alaska.
Is it
So
in
that one is
Alaska? Okay.
actually, yeah, that one's the tallest one in North America as well. So that's kind of what sparked my kind of tied those two goals together, was completing the 50 states. My last one was Alaska, Denali. And actually that one I went to when I was 13 because I completed all the other states when I was 12. And then I went to go climb Denali when I was 13 and we made it to high camp. It took us 21 days in total, but there was an accident on the mountain at high camp. Our guides had to go on a rescue mission for someone not in our group, but in a group around us. And after that, the man unfortunately didn't make it. So the whole like upper mountain was evacuated due to weather coming in, and we just didn't have the chance to try for this summit. So I after that I kind of got into like high school running really intensely. So I was like, I don't have time to go back and try for this mountain, but I was able to go back when I was 17 and complete it. So that was really, really cool to see.
Wow. That's incredible. Um, are you usually the youngest person on the mountain? Like, are there other kids that are 13 years old climbing?
Very rarely. I've almost always been the youngest person on any mountain. On Denali, there was actually one kid younger than me, which was really cool. It was a boy. I think he was I want to say 15, 14 or 15, and he was actually trying to become the youngest um male to ever to do the 50 states. So,
Wow.
I mean, it's very rare that's the only other time I've seen someone my age in the mountains, which was like really cool to see. But yeah, that's one of my big, initiatives is to get more young people in the mountains, especially young women, just because that is definitely a stereotype that's held like, oh, if you're smaller, you can't carry as much of a pack because mountaineering is a lot about carrying a very heavy backpack at times, just because you need so much gear,
Mhm.
and you're often on the mountains for very long amounts of times, weeks, sometimes close to a month. Um, so carrying all that gear can definitely be challenging, but it's definitely not impossible. I mean, I hope that my story shows that it's not impossible and that, young people, women, or everyone can be in the mountains and thrive there.
Yeah. So what do you think? I always thought of mountaineering for a long time. Obviously, I'm much older than you, but like it was always kind of like a male dominated kind of sport in a way. Where do you see the lines drawn now? Are we seeing significantly more females that are mountaineering than there were in the past? What would you say the ratio is to that?
I'd say it's definitely improving. There definitely are a lot more, but it's nowhere near equal still. I'd say maybe like 10 to 20%
Wow.
is female. And then the rest, yeah, the rest male, even less young people, very few. And it does definitely depend on like the mountain, on the region as well. On Everest, there, I would say I've like felt like there was a pretty good amount of women on Everest. I was actually pleasantly surprised by that, which was really cool to see. But on Denali, I didn't see very many women at all. Just yeah, on a lot of mountains, and there's there actually I'm partnering with this company called All Summit Scholarship. They're a nonprofit that actually provides grants for women to go into the mountains and to be guided by all women teams. They provide amazing teams of women that actually, take you to the mountains, give you the skills that you need. And it's really cool because it's the only like all woman run expedition that's out there. So I'm partnering with them this upcoming year to guide a trip up Mount Baker, and applications are actually going to launch on December 5th. So that's really fun. Like coming up really fast. So it's women anywhere from 14 to 19 because I really wanted to be kind of that younger crowd just because I started so young mountaineering, and I feel like a lot of young people are super underestimated in the mountains. And it's, I mean, you can do it. I think, I mean, just in general, I think young people are often underestimated for what they understand, what they can do physically. And I'm really excited to hopefully, show a few girls how to like how to mountaineer and hopefully spark that passion within them.
Right, right. That's wonderful. I'm curious, how do you, particularly with like something like Everest, how do you train for mountaineering? What are the most important strengths you need for something like this?
Yeah, I'd say endurance is definitely a big key just because the mountains are they're very long. That's like the main part. There's definitely like some like explosiveness needed when you're actually like, physically like climbing, taking big like steps with a big backpack can definitely be hard. But for the most part, it's just a very long haul. Multiple days, and some days can be extremely long hours. On Everest, my longest day was summit day. Summit days are often the longest day, and mine was 15 hours. So just trying, continuing to hike for 15 hours is definitely mentally challenging. The mental part of climbing is no doubt the hardest part. Just, getting yourself to continue can be very challenging, especially when the altitude hits and you just feel horrible because altitude, I mean, that's a huge component of mountaineering. Altitude can it makes harder to breathe. You don't get as much from the air you breathe, so you're deprived of oxygen. Your lungs tire, your muscles tire. You just feel a lot weaker up there. So that's a major component and something that's really hard to train for as well, unless you live near mountains or near elevation that you can get to. So
Right.
that's always been something that's tough for me because I've lived, Chicago, Louisville, very flat places. But how I train is just training that endurance and that, the muscles that you need. I just use my running for the endurance side. Um, running like 35 to 50 miles a week. And then also just, weightlifting pretty consistently. Here I do it three to four times a week, weightlifting and bodybuilding.
Wow. They say all the Olympic athletes train in Colorado because they want to train them at high altitudes to make them better athletes. So I think there's several like training centers that are there.
Yeah, I mean the benefits you get from being at high altitude are amazing just because you produce so many more red blood cells up there. So when you come back to sea level, you just can use the oxygen so much more efficiently in your body, which is amazing. I haven't like done any competitions right after climbing a mountain, but I'd love to see kind of how that affects me for sure.
um, how do you train for the weather, or is there such a thing?
Honestly, no. The weather, you just have to take it as it comes and be mentally tough with it. The weather is a huge component of mountaineering just because it's so unknown. The weather can change in 1 second up there, and it can be life-threatening. I mean, avalanches, storms, when the visibility goes, I mean, you don't know if you're walking off a cliff or not, and it can be very dangerous. So the weather is definitely something that is like one of my least favorite parts of mountaineering just because it's so uncontrollable. I mean, you can be feeling great physically and have to turn around because of the weather. On Everest, we were at Camp 3, which there's 4 camps in total, and then the summit. So we were 2 days away from the summit, and I was feeling great, but the winds were just so high that we had to turn around. And I was scared that we weren't going to, have an attempt to at the summit. Luckily, like the day after, the weather cleared up and we went back up again. But just, I mean, even spending that energy of going up a day and then having to come back down was very, very mentally challenging for sure, and physically challenging. So the weather is something that you can't really prepare for. You just have to be prepared for whatever comes your way. And honestly, just look at it the morning of. There's sometimes you can't even predict the weather correctly up there, even though they have amazing technology that's improved a lot. But a lot of the times it's not correct.
So preparing for weather might just be preparing your mental game more than anything.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Just
for sure.
to mentally power through, whether it's rain or snow or sleet or whatever, high winds or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and everyone definitely has to, find their own comfort level of what they're, comfortable going through. You have to know yourself really well, what your skills are, what your capabilities are, because I mean, there's a very fine line up there between stupid and brave, between like pushing through something that will get you to the top, but not pushing through something that'll get you killed getting to the top, or getting back down, because I mean, it's very, very dangerous on the mountains. And that's something that you have to always be aware of and really know how much you're willing to risk getting to the top.
And tell me about the experience getting to the top. What was that like?
On Everest, it was absolutely amazing. It was one of my favorite mountains I've ever been on by far, probably the most beautiful, just because there's so many mountains around you. I mean, we hiked for 8 days just to get to base camp, and the Himalayas, like there's snow-peaked mountains all around you the entire way. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that was just amazing. It was really cool because my family and friends, a group of 10 people actually accompanied me to base camp before I went on with just my Sherpa from there. So that was a super cool experience as well, just to have them around me. But it was definitely very hard from base camp onward. I mean, going through the ice fall. The ice fall is a bunch of crevasses, essentially a field of crevasses that takes about 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours to climb through. And that is going from base camp to camp one, and it's just very technical. I'd never done a lot of ice climbing before, so I mean, it's not like bare ice climbing. There's a lot of ropes that you can help use to help you get up, but it is a lot of work, especially with a very heavy backpack, which is something that I is a struggle for me a lot of the times just because I'm so small. So having that backpack on and climbing up, vertical faces it was very difficult. So that day was very difficult. And then I mean, all of every day held its challenges. Summit day, you have to get up at 9 p.m. and start hiking, which is really challenging on your body. It's pitch black out, and there was just a line of people that was really hard to get past. So that was and very slow moving. So that was definitely a challenge mentally. But once you get to the top, it's all worth it. It's so beautiful up there.
You're above the
It's I
clouds?
don't even know how to do. Yeah, yeah, you're above the clouds. I mean, not always. It kind of depends, on the weather. But for
Right, sure,
me, on
yeah.
summit day, the clouds were all below. There's just a mountain peaks all around you, like peeking out of the clouds, and they were like pink and orange. We summited about an hour after sunrise, so it was a beautiful time of day.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, giving people that are listening just a perspective, because this is audio only podcast, to be above the clouds, you're pretty high up there.
Yeah, yeah, over 29,000 feet. It was crazy.
Is Everest the hardest mountain to climb in the world?
No, no, it's the tallest, but there's definitely harder ones. And there's a lot of different aspects of climbing. There's, mountaineering, which is mostly what I do. There's like the rock climbing aspect, the ice climbing. So all of those have different mountains that are, the hardest or very difficult. So for the mountaineering world, some of the really known hard ones, I mean, Everest is a very known hard one, but the hardest are probably Annapurna and K2. They're some of the most dangerous as well. just because of their avalanches, and they're both in the Himalayas. K2 is the second tallest mountain in the world. Annapurna is one of the 16 mountains in the world that's over 8,000 feet. So that one's very tall as well. But height is definitely not the only thing that goes into these mountains. There's just how technical it is, how how long it is, what endurance you need to get to the top, how steep it is. There's a lot of different factors for sure, and how much snowfall. So those are some of the hardest ones. And then, I mean, climbing, I haven't done a lot of climbing, so I'm not an expert, but I mean, in Patagonia, there's insanely difficult places to climb and all around the world. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anyone could peg the one hardest mountain, just because there's so many difficult aspects of so many mountains
Sure.
that it's really, yeah, it's difficult to just peg one.
Tell me about what's the emotional component of this like when you're going up a mountain? Is it a mixed bag of things? Are you sometimes crying, sometimes angry, sometimes euphorically happy? What do you go through on an emotional level, or do you tune that out with your mental game? Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster, for sure. And I mean, in the mountains, I feel like in my day-to-day life, it's just so busy that a lot of, the feelings and the emotions get kind of like lost or like dulled down. But in the mountains, I you feel so much. I mean, you're so invested in what you're doing, and there's so many things that you can control, but there's so many things you can't control. And a lot of times your emotions get tied up in those. And you definitely can't, there's definitely like sometimes that you have to shut off your emotions when you're in a very technical area and you have to completely focus on one thing. It's very handy to be able to, not get overly like frustrated, overly angry, or yeah, like scared. Being scared is probably the worst thing honestly for
Mhm.
climbing. That And I've definitely worked on that a lot through my mountaineering, and just having the experience of being in the mountains is what has prepared me to just not be scared. I mean, the more you do something, the more you get used to it. So I almost feel like, heights, I used to be afraid of them when I was younger, when I first started climbing, but now I'm pretty numb to them, and now it doesn't really freak me out anymore. Which is very important for climbing, because if you're, scared of heights and you're around heights all the time, that's going to fog up your senses. So you definitely have to be super mentally in it. But
Sure.
when you get in those tents at night and just like decompress, I have a journal that I just journal in every night when I'm on the mountains. So that's, an area where I just recap the day, and, allow myself to feel everything. And sometimes in those rest moments, you just have to like take a look around, like I remind myself of that often when in super beautiful moments. I'm like, okay, I just need to like stand here for a second and take it all in.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the spiritual component coming in, actually.
Yes,
Uh,
for sure, for sure. No, that's I mean, when I'm climbing just the whole time, or not the whole time, but a lot of the time, I'm just praying in my head, and like thanking God for this opportunity to be on in this beautiful area of the world.
Sure, sure. This may seem like a silly question. If it is, I apologize. But do you when you're taking these long journeys, particularly with like Everest and how long you had to hike just to get to the first base camps, like some of these some of these things seem like a really long time. Are you just left with your thoughts during that journey and you have to keep kind of watching and listening for things, or can you put in your AirPods and listen to something? Like, is that silly to say? Can you listen to music on your way up, or do you need to be tuned into everything around you?
Yeah, no, there's definitely different parts of the mountain that require different things. So, up to base camp, I had like a speaker on my backpack that I was, blasting music like the whole time. And me and one of my friends, we were just like dancing the entire way up. So like the parts of the mountain that's more like hiking, where there's no dangerous avalanche danger, when you're not on the glacier, that those areas are usually totally fine to wear headphones in, or just listen to music and kind of be distracted. But when you get, above base camp, I never wear headphones when I'm climbing, just because you need to hear avalanche danger, you need to hear if the glacier, the ice is moving, and you need to be able to communicate with your team, because that's super important. I mean, it was just me and my Sherpa on Everest, but a lot of these mountains, roped up to, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 people. And you need to be able to hear if someone yells stop, if someone needs to stop. You don't want to just like keep hiking and like pull them along. And yeah, it's super important to have that communication. So definitely different mountains and different parts of each mountain allow for different things.
My producing partner's in Colorado, so many times when I'm out there, he tries to get me to bicycle up something that's really tall, or I run out of air halfway up. Like, I realize how incredibly out of shape I am whenever I go out there, and it's insane. But he tried to get me rock climbing several years ago. But I'll
Very
tell you
cool.
what the hardest thing was for me. I'm not scared of heights. I really would like the challenge of learning this type of stuff more, which is why I love guests like you, because I bring these exceptional people on to tell these stories, and I'm just like, man, I want to know about this just as much as I think other people do. Even if I might not take it to the extent that you have. I don't think I have any dreams of climbing Everest in the near future. Maybe some small things in whatever state I might be in. But my biggest, I'm getting off the subject, but my biggest problem was having faith in my equipment, like trusting that. That's what really like was in my head all the time. Like, are these ropes going to support me? Is carabiners going to, that's what I couldn't get past that. Like, it was like really a weird mental block for me to trust the equipment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, equipment is your life up there. One thing goes wrong. I mean, you're clipping your life to a carabiner and on a rope.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see where that's a valid a very valid fear. I just learned like there's really no if you want to do it, there's really like you just have to trust them.
Yeah.
There's no other alternative. So I've seen enough people, been around it enough and use this equipment enough where I mean I've never seen it, I've never seen a rope snap. The mountaineering ropes
Yeah.
are super amazing technology, especially nowadays. I'm so lucky I'm not climbing 100 years ago because those ropes definitely did snap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely getting a lot better.
I feel
It's
the
definitely
same.
getting a lot better
I feel the same way when
for
I
climbing.
when I parachute or skydive. It's just, how many times have they used this equipment and who packed the chute?
Hmm.
It gets in my
Yeah.
head. Although I'll still do it, it does mess with me a lot. It really does. But anyways, moving on. So you're currently at USC now. Tell me about that experience. You've gone from the Midwest to California. So what's that transition been like for you?
It's been really fun. I really wanted, something different from the Midwest. I wanted something that was just like new. I love adventure. I love new experiences. So I was super happy to just get to a different culture, and make new friends and meet new people, have new experiences with the running team. Running college is definitely a lot different than high school. And also the academics, going to school is a lot different, living on my own. So there's definitely been a lot of adventures out here, but it's been a really good experience overall, and I feel like I've transitioned pretty well, and I love my roommates. They're awesome. I love it here. Like the school's beautiful, which is amazing. The team is great, but there's definitely hard parts for sure. I mean, like anything, there's ups and downs. So finals coming up, that's super stressful. So yeah, there's good and bad for sure,
Sure.
but I'm happy here.
You talked a little bit earlier in the interview about the Explorers Grand Slam. Let's just kind of go over that a little bit more. How many kind of challenges are there for this, and how many have you done? How many are coming up? Like, let's go over the specifics of that, because you're also raising money for this too, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get, sponsors to help support me just because I mean, there's no way I could do it without sponsors. The North and South Pole, Everest are very expensive climbs. So I've kind of done, the ones I could do by myself, essentially, excluding, I mean, also Everest. I got an amazing sponsor from Grape Nuts. It's like this cereal brand, that they were, I mean, really kind to me, just gave me, $12,000, along with other, 9 other women mountaineers that were doing the North and South Poles in Everest that year. which was like amazing that they're supporting that cause. They did it because of the 50th anniversary of Title IX, so that was just a super cool initiative there. And yeah, I mean the next ones, there's seven mountains in total plus the two poles, so nine, kind of, I guess, summits to reach, challenges to do, and I've done five so far. So
Wow.
I have two more mountains and then the North and South poles. So that's actually three expeditions, just because the South Pole, when you go to Antarctica, you could do the tallest mountain in Antarctica and the South Pole just in one trip. So
Gotcha.
three different trips left for me. And unfortunately, I was planning on going to Papua New Guinea to do the tallest mountain in Oceania this Christmas break. But unfortunately, the mountain is, they're not giving out permits this year, just because the tribal warfare there is really still dangerous. And
Right.
so it's been closed for 3 years. So I'm really hoping I have a year and a couple months to do it. So I'm crossing my fingers that it'll be open in the summer. I really hope that that will allow me to do that. But some things are just out of your control, and you have to trust that
Sure.
God has the perfect plan, that things will work out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You're likely going to achieve some pretty major goals before you're ever old enough to drink. I'm curious, what's in store for, 40-year-old Lucy? What are the future goals after you've hit all the highest points of Earth? What's next? Do you need to go to Mars and climb the tallest mountain there? Like, I don't know. What's the future hold for you? What are the dreams, the ambitions?
I have joked about climbing the tallest mountain in there, but yeah, no, I mean I really like to take it kind of one step at a time for sure. So just completing this goal is my next step, and then once this goal is complete, I'll look to the next one. But I mean, the day in day out of college running is also, a big goal for me, to just improve as much as I can in my running career and see where that takes me. I'd love to, run marathons, possibly get back into triathlons. That was something I was really passionate about before I came to college to run. So maybe doing Ironmans would be amazing. But I'm definitely, I mean, I love climbing, so I'm always going to climb and always going to have a goal that I'm pushing for with that. So I mean, I had in the back of my mind too, and it's a very popular thing to do right now, is to climb the eight tallest peaks that are above, or sorry, 16 tallest peaks that are above um 8,000 meters. So that, I mean, that's a very challenging goal that includes pretty much the hardest mountaineering mountains in the world.
Hmm.
So and they're all, in the Himalayas, amazing, like super tall mountains. So I'd love to start doing more of those, possibly over the summer, and just onward in my life. I definitely want to complete that goal at some point.
That's exciting. Well, Lucy, you are quite extraordinary, really. I am so happy that you came on the show today. Tell everyone, how can people find you out there on the interwebs?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and TikTok are my main platforms. So What's Next Lucy is my username for both of those. And I'm also on YouTube. I post pretty much just long like videos of my expeditions on there. So I don't frequently post, but those are some really cool videos if you want to like learn more of just the day to day, like what it is to climb a mountain. I mean, I like do little vlogs every day, put them together in a video after that, so you can see, I made some for Everest. I made them for the tallest mountain in South America, Aconcagua, when I climbed that one. I made the one for Denali, the tallest one in North America. So just yeah, you can check that out too. It's just Lucy Westlake is my username. So those are the platforms I'm really on. I'm also on Facebook. It's kind of linked to my Instagram. So What's Next
Do you have
Lucy
a
for that
website
as
too, or
well.
do you have a .com?
Yeah, lucywestlake.com. You can find out more about my story, what I'm involved in with the water crisis, with different initiatives to get more women in the mountains, everything like that.
I think there was something on your website, if I recall, that showed kind of this Explorers Grand Slam and a little map of all the mountains and all that stuff. Did I see that on there?
Yeah, and I'm actually in the process of updating my website right now, so it should be coming out with some cool new updates soon.
Well, that's great. Lucy, I appreciate you coming out today, and let's talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you, and I hope the listeners all enjoy.
We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Fischer, the host of the Cult Following podcast. Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective through exhaustive research and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure and visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.